Hello and welcome to episode 3 of I Want to Talk About You with me, Tim Russell. As usual, big thanks to everyone who's listened and subscribed so far. Your support is really appreciated, and if this is your first visit, please check out my previous episodes once you've listened to this one, of course. In this episode, I talked to a musician who returned rather unexpectedly to my life in 2025. Back in the mid-80s, when I was a surly, moody, black-clad teenager, I was heavily into electronic and industrial music and was delighted to discover one such band in my hometown of Coventry, a band called Attrition. They may not have had the exotic appeal of, say, DAF or Front 242, but the fact that they were from Cov made me love them more. As I got older and my tastes expanded, I have to admit I kind of forgot about Attrition until one night in early 2025. I was leaving a live music venue in Bangkok after photographing a gig when someone pressed a bunch of flyers into my hand, which I shoved straight into my camera bag. When I looked at them the next morning, I saw one of them announcing Attrition live in Bangkok. Surely it can't be the Attrition, I thought, but it turned out that it was. So I managed to get in touch with the band's founder, Martin Bowes, via a mutual friend on Facebook, and we arranged to meet before the gig, which took place in May last year. We had a great catch-up over more than a few drinks, and Martin's girlfriend's excellent veggie food. And the next day, somewhat the worse for wear, I have to say, I photographed their first ever live performance in Thailand, which was excellent. So when I started this podcast, Martin was one of the first names that came to mind. So a couple of weeks ago, we sat down for a chat about the Cov music scene in the late 70s, early 80s, how Attrition's music has developed over the last 40-odd years, why 2026 isn't as bad a time to be in a band as a lot of people think, and a lot more. So here we go, episode 3 of I Want to Talk About You with Attrition's Martin Bowes. Martin, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Great to have you on board. Let's start with the usual question that I ask everybody. Where are you right now, and what are you working on? What are you up to?
Well, I'm at home. I'm in the it's the dining room actually. I'm sitting it's where my office, I call it, but it is really. So I'm sitting here, and yeah, I'm generally at home at the moment. So I'm working in the studio most days, which is what I do when I'm not touring and stuff. So yeah, I'm always doing lots of mastering. That's my day job, if you like.
So that's your bread and butter, rather than making music as Attrition. It's
yeah, but
mastering.
production as well, mostly mastering. And then I do Attrition, and yesterday I never get enough time, but yesterday I had a day writing a new song, which was great, because that's the weird thing. I never get enough time these days because I'm so busy with music, ironically. But yeah, that's what I'm doing.
When you say mastering, whose music are you mastering?
Well, loads. I mean, I almost get an album every day sent. I've just got some Coil reissues to do. I do lots of labels. There's lots of, that's Cold Spring Records, and they do a lot of dark ambient and experimental stuff. People like Psychic TV, well, that was, and Coil, and then a lot of new bands as well they do. And then I do, all over the world, really. I've got a lot of labels that regularly send me, I'll get albums to make them sound nice. Sometimes old stuff that I, clean up and restore, but I'm glad I don't get the old. I used to get a lot that was taken off old vinyl, and can you clean it? And that gets annoying. I don't like doing that because it doesn't always work. Sometimes it is what it is. I get a lot of Ukrainian bands. I've got various labels there. Although some have moved out actually, and they're in Poland or wherever, but I get a lot from there, which is great that they're still doing all that while they're under all that crap from Russia. So yeah, I'm kind of glad to do those. Yeah, lots of stuff, varied.
Good. And you've got a new project, Klandestine, which you launched. Was that late last year or early this year?
Yeah, well, the CD came out in, I think it was September. I can't remember the date, but yeah, that's our first. It's a collaboration with Usher San, who lives in Dijon in France, being as he's French, and he he's well known for doing a lot of bands, but Norma Loy is quite well known, French post-punk band that started in the early 80s. Yeah. Almost the same length of time as Attrition, really. But yeah, so I don't know, we just started talking a few years ago, and then eventually got started doing a couple of tracks together, and then ended up we put out a 6-track, don't know what you call it, EP, maxi, mini album, whatever. It doesn't really matter,
I
does it?
think 6 is a mini album, isn't it? I
It
would
is
say.
sort of, isn't it? Yeah. So that came out in September on a Italian label, Silentes. There's talk of doing a vinyl version with 4 extra songs and probably different mixes on a French label, and we're just looking into doing some shows in the south of France. Well, this year, but we haven't got anything arranged yet. But yeah, it's good that we went over in June and made a video and met up for the first time. So that's great. So that's Julia from Attrition and me and Usher. So it's like a mashup of the two bands, really. Yeah, I enjoy
You're
that.
incredibly prolific. I mean, I've been, obviously, I always do a bit of research for these podcasts. I don't just go in blind, and looking through your back catalogue. I mean, you've put out a massive amount of music. It's in the 40 odd years you've been going. How do you stay so prolific?
Well, actually, if you look on something like a lot of things, Bandcamp, people look on and they go, "Oh, you've had 80 releases," but there's loads of remixes and live things as well. So that is actually, new albums. I've actually slowed down when I did the Black Mariah album, which already that was nearly getting on for 2 years ago, actually. And that was 8 years since the last album that we did of new stuff. Did a lot of different projects and remixes. And so I did another band as well, actually, called Engram. That was another side project with a guy here, I say Coventry, but he's in Kenilworth. So you'll know where that is, but no one else will. um, but yeah, so I did that with John Costello. So I did, yeah. So that's a new album. It's just wasn't Attrition, but I have slowed down a lot. I'm conscious of that, and partly to do with all the work I do for other bands, but also um, it's just I think I don't like repeating, and I don't like just knocking out the same old type of track. I want to work on something that's something a bit new or challenging. Whether it is or not, I don't know, but I do like the idea of that. I don't want to just churn out an album a year at this stage. There's no point. So I'm actually working on an EP now. So just four tracks, but that's coming together. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just love doing it. I always have. It's just I started out actually as a visual artist. I was just went to art school and dropped out to do music, and that's what all good punk rockers were supposed to do. And so I did that, and then it went over to, I did go back and do a bit of painting in about 1990, but then I decided no, I get much more from music. So yeah, I just, like I always say, I've never found anything better to do, really.
And what's your sort of creative setup these days? Are you still using sort of old analog synths and drum machines, or are you totally digital now, or
Well, I
a bit of
went
a mix?
obviously obviously we started with that, and when I actually had a proper job for 8 months in 1980 to 81 at the university. Well, it was the Polytechnic, Coventry, Lanchester Polytechnic, and I would just use all the money to buy equipment because we just started. But I managed to be able to buy a TR-808 drum machine, which was like a legendary. We got some good bits of kit, actually. I can't believe I just bought a new drum machine, and I looked at what the price of the 808 would be now, and it would be about £2,500, and I thought, wow, I was on a low paid job and then on the dole, but I just put everything into the band. So
You
yeah,
still
that
using that?
started.
You still using that old gear? Is it still working?
The Korg MS-20, which was originally Ashley from Attrition, it was originally his, but I've kind of inherited it. So I'll fight him if he wants to try and take it back. But he lives in San Francisco now, so he's got no chance. But no, I mean, I had that, and then I bought other things, obviously, over the years, and I sold some and always regretted it. But sometimes you need money, and it did go very digital and computer based like a lot of people did, and I like that. But then, yeah, something's missing. So now, in recent years, the analog synths by companies like Behringer, whatever, they're so cheap. And some of them are copies of old stuff, but there's a lot of new things. They're so cheap, and I've bought loads, so I can't stop buying them. I've got the money now, I don't care. But yeah, so it's actually, it works well because I would do a mix of, painstaking editing on the computer. I use Cubase. So I do a lot on there, and then I mix it. I get the sync up the synths, and that was the post just arrived.
Okay, yeah, I
You
thought I
heard the
wondered what that
bang.
was. I thought it sounded
Yeah,
like something was falling down in your.
no, something came through the letterbox. So so I love it. It's a nice mix. I'll be like I'll say what I'm going to use now, and it's get less likely to get a bit stuck or up a dead end because I'll just go, right, okay, I'm going to try this one instead. And yeah, I've got loads of stuff. It's great. I should have. I've done it long enough.
Well, let's go back to your sort of early years and your childhood growing up in our hometown of Coventry. Who were your sort of early musical heroes and influences, and how did you first get into music?
I think it was weird because I was originally born up north in County Durham, but we came down in the car. Obviously Coventry was the car. So it was the Detroit of England for a while, wasn't it? And that's why my dad ended up working at the college here, a new college, Henley. So I came here. I was about 5, and so we didn't even have a record player at home. It wasn't really the most musical family until I think I was about 12 when we got one. So I heard stuff, but it was really that age. And it was not long after that I'd go to a party at a school friends and I heard this David Bowie and things like that. And then which I loved, and then it was that sort of glam era, really. More than Bowie, I loved the early Roxy music with Eno and stuff, and I still do all of them. So all that era was really Cockney Rebel was another one I liked. So that was what I got into. I got into rock and roll after that because the mainstream music scene really got very bland in the mid-set, which was one of the reasons that punk rock happened. That's a bit of a cliche, but just I did see the Sex Pistols in 1977, but it wasn't necessarily them that inspired me. It was just punk. It's probably more the Clash, actually. I went to I was 18 and an angry teenager, and here was my religion, I suppose. That
And
came,
that
and
led
that's
you
when
to start the fanzine, right?
Yeah, I wanted to do music, but I've got no. I mean, I still don't think of myself as musically skilled in that way. I just get people that do play violin and things if I want. But I mean, I am. I've just learned a different electronic way of creating. But yeah, I didn't. I wanted to do a band, but I'd got no idea what to do. And then I thought, well, we need to write about what's happening. And fanzines were quite big. It's nice to see them coming back, actually. They've definitely come back a bit. So yeah, I started Alternative Sounds in 1970. That was my entry into the music business, if you like. And it was good because I got to meet lots of bands and got to see how things happened. And then you used to trade fanzines with other fanzine writers. It was quite like a community. Used to put soap on your stamps, and then you could wash it off, the franking off, and then use it again. So all the little anarchist punk fanzines were great. And then we would have tracks on cassettes, when I started Attrition, and fanzines generally released them, or small cassette labels. But yeah, that was it really helped, And also I got gigs for Attrition in different towns because I knew the guy that did the fanzine, and everyone had a little band on the side, and I'd get them a gig in Coventry.
Well, late 70s, early 80s Coventry was probably a good time to be running a fanzine because you had the whole two-tone thing
Well,
going
yeah,
off
I
as
used to
well.
I'd interviewed the specials. After a bit, I stopped because I thought, well, they were mega, in the charts, and I thought, oh, there's no point. My fanzine's not going to help, so I'd stopped writing about them and concentrated on bands that weren't known. I just thought, I mean, a totally bad commercial decision for selling copies, but I didn't. That's not why I did it. It was. I didn't even have advertising. It was just, no, I don't want that. So
So how
yeah,
did
it was a
Attrition
great
get?
time. Mm.
How did it?
Well, we we had a little failed attempt where we all tried to learn an instrument. We'll have. I had my drummer, my friend from school played drums, and then it was like, well, we'll have guitar. I'll try guitar. And no, don't. Yeah, I shouldn't have tried. It was absolutely useless. But I did get better with it when I put it through. I played it with a brick and put it through a fuzz box and then the tape loops. And I thought, this is more interesting. And then I thought, but I'd probably get a synth. So we sort of, the first attempt was actually writing, just trying to do songs, and it was rubbish. So we gave it up, and this is 1980, yeah. So then again, later on in 1980, we thought, let's have another go, but let's just experiment. So I'd be recording the vacuum cleaner and banging buckets and things, and add tape delays and bit of electronics. And Julia could sing and play bass, so we had some music. And Ashley could play the keyboards, actually. So we did have a musical thing, but I was much more the experimental one, and then I got a drum machine. It was a much better way to do it, to start much more organically, really. And of course, nobody liked it in Coventry.
Well, that's one of my questions actually. Was normally like industrial cities, and you mentioned Detroit earlier, and I'm thinking of Sheffield as well. They produce quite a lot of industrial and electronic bands. I mean, look at Sheffield as a prime example. Why do you think Coventry's only really produced Attrition who make that kind of music? Because it is a very industrial city.
Yeah, there's a bit more now, though, actually. I mean, we played here, and then I always thought I wish I was in Sheffield. And when I was 2 years old, I was living in Rotherham. That does have some negative connotations, I know, but it's right next to Sheffield. So it's like I could have been in the Sheffield scene. But yeah, no, we weren't. And people here, it wasn't even particularly a big ska scene because it was a new thing, the Specials took it outside of Coventry. Great, I'm glad they did. But it was more punk and rock and metal and more mainstream in a way, even though at the time it's not necessarily commercial, but more regular sort of bands. So yeah, it didn't go that well. Partly because we just started though, and we were probably a bit rubbish. So I have to put in that. I have got tapes. But then then we just stopped playing live and we started recording and getting into all the synths and experiments, and I think we started to do some really good tracks then in like by come sort of 83 mostly, a little bit in 82, and then we started playing live again, and started putting records out at the end of 83 and then in 84. So it started happening, and we got in the national press and on John Peel, and started touring in Europe. So that's how it sort of took off. But yeah, and we moved out. We toured Holland in early 84 with Switzerland with the legendary Pink Dots. We became friends, and we moved down to London and like shared houses and things with them. 84. There was no need to move to London, but it seemed like what you did, But it was better for getting abroad, really. We did meet a few people, but yeah, I've forgotten the question now.
So have I. Well, it was, why do you think there wasn't more industrial music coming out of Coventry?
Yeah, okay. See, I go on a tangent all the time. But yeah. I mean, since we didn't, we played in Coventry. The last time was 1984. And there's some photos and a little bit of recording, which some of it was okay as later on, but then we moved to London then, and I did move back. I moved to Holland then, and so I didn't know what was happening here, but I moved back at the end of 89, and I just was like, I got married and lived in Holland, and we split up, and I was like, oh, I'll go back to mum's, as people inevitably do. And so I thought, yeah, and then I was there. I wasn't there long, but I was just came back to Coventry basically. And then we didn't play in Coventry till 99, so it was 15 years later. And we were playing all around, everywhere. Did a lot of American tours, but not Coventry. But then we did, and it was a bit better. And so we did the odd one, but not too many. But more in the last few years, it's really quite changed, and there's a lot of much more experimental interest in, not necessarily weird experimental, but just post-punk, different sort of vibe, like really interesting stuff that I like. And then we'd be asked to play, and it's good. It's good. It's like things caught up a bit. It took a long time.
It's like the city's caught up with you.
Yeah, I remember because for about 16 years, from 95 to 2011, I used to teach music technology at the college here. It was Tile Hill and then the Butts, and just part-time so I could do the band, you know. In fact, they used to pay me staff development to tour America. That was pretty good. Those days are long gone, but we did that, and it was interesting because a lot of the students that were into drum and bass, you know, while I was there, I never used to push Attrition, but they'd start talking while they're there, and they get to hear Attrition, and it was the ones that were into drum and bass that go, "Yeah, I love those sounds," you know, because it was the sort of dark sounds. When we started, they weren't in the mainstream at all, were they? Really, it was something that very rare, maybe in a film or something, but. And I think that was when things changed, when dark, you know, dance music it had a dark side, and I think it just becomes more acceptable to be doing that, and I think that helped. So yeah, times have changed, you know, but I don't know if it's good being accepted, you know. I think it's better when we weren't.
Prefer to be outsiders. Well, in the early 80s, when you started, there was very much a divide, wasn't there, between like rock music, guitar music, and electronic music, and it was almost kind of like a war. Why did you end up on the electronic side? Was it an ideological thing, or was it just because you, as you mentioned before, you couldn't play guitar very well?
It's mostly to do, I think, no, there's a few factors actually. Funny because, I mean, I still listen to old punk records more than anything. People get surprised, you know. But my friend actually famously said that, like someone else that was in the punk band, said I turned to the dark side, which I thought was brilliant. I love that. But
That's a compliment, isn't it?
I know it is. It's good.
It's a compliment.
I mean, obviously, I loved all that initial wave of punk when it was something, well, beyond exciting, you know, and it wasn't. Uh, you know, it got really narrowed down, didn't it, and just became a bit of a shouty stomp. But it was much more than that. And then I saw one really important gig I went to at Tiffany's. You know, you probably went there, didn't you? Yeah. And it was Susie and the Banshees in 1978 with this new electronic band, the Human League, playing support. And it was like, and I'd never seen an electronic band. And it was like, wow, you know, I mean, it was great analog equipment through a big PA, so it was the best, you know. And then Susie as well. I mean, I always say to people that's kind of a bit like the start of the sort of gothic industrial scene, you know, that. And it was all under what was seen as punk. It was like, you know, the next step, you know, chapter 2, really. So that influenced me. And then bands like Cabaret, Voltaire were massive, you know. I got Nag Nag Nag, and that was amazing. And it was great to see them actually recently. They're doing shows again for 50
Oh,
years.
how was that?
It was amazing. It was one of the best gigs I've ever seen. And I saw they did a little tour last autumn, and we went to the Birmingham one, and it was, yeah, I was blown away because I'd seen them in '92 just before they split, and they'd gone all like a house band, house music, and it was awful. I wish I hadn't gone, you know. So that was my memory. Where it's all been erased, you know. It was fantastic, and everybody loved it. And they're playing another tour next year, so I'm going to go to that. But they were a massive influence on Attrition as an entity, really. Even though, to me, the whole punk ethos and spirit was also an influence, even if, like, Crass is one of my favourite bands, and you know, I was that if I don't have a religion except for my own thoughts, but if I had one, it would be them. You know, it was like, So that was great. And I tell people they were a big influence, and they go, "What?" It's funny, recently people can't get that punk is a big influence on Attrition, but it's it is, you know. Anyway, so I got in musically into the more electronic stuff, and you're right. So there's partly just the interest, but you're right. I just thought, wow, I could make some noises on a synth and do stuff, and so that's what we did. So that's why we came. I mean, it's never been 100% electronic. We've had lots of string instruments and guitars occasionally, and obviously vocals, bit of bass. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix. But it's just what I like doing. It's weird because it isn't what I listen to much. I'd obviously love Kraftwerk as well. That goes back to even before punk. It was that whole scene, and even the rock bands. When there was from that post-punk scene, it would be Cabaret, Voltaire, but I'd also love Joy Division, of course. Metal Box, Pill's Metal Box is one of my favourite things. There was this magazine, even when they were rock bands, they were more on the edge and doing different things and creating different sounds, and that exciting.
I mean, around that time, it's interesting that you mentioned Human League, because there were a lot of bands around that time who kind of shifted from being experimental art school to making pop records. There was the Human League, there was like Vice Versa, who became ABC. There was Soft Cell, OMD, all started off as very experimental bands and suddenly went very mainstream. Were you never tempted to do that? Were you never tempted to start writing pop songs? I can't imagine you singing a pop song, but
I can't do it. I've tried. I thought, let's write one. Let's try and do one. And we tried to do it in about '86, I think. And we just struggled. And there's this terrible demo that luckily I only did it on our own little 4-track, but no, it was terrible. And then even when we did some stuff in late '80s, and the label said, well, we could get some dance mixes. And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah." And they said, "Yeah, we could have a hit with this if we get some producer to do these dance mixes." And it's a single we called Hayden that we did, and they did them, and they weren't. I don't think they were very good, and nobody bought them. And then we got a bill for all the studio time for the producer. So I just thought, I mean, I thought that was me, like going, okay, it's kind of an experiment, um, for us anyway. But that didn't work. But I learned, you got to try these things, haven't you? So I learnt the lesson. Yeah, I think to do something commercial, do it as a different project. I mean, I haven't. I think because a lot of bands they've spoilt their career, haven't they, by doing some really crappy commercial pop songs, and then that nobody liked, and then then they end up just splitting up and no one likes them anymore. And the Human League, when I mention them, most people think of their later pop songs, and they don't realise how amazing they were on those first 2 albums.
Well, I remember when we met up in Bangkok last year. I remember we were sitting listening to, was it Reproduction, I think? Drinking large quantities of wine and beer and listening to Reproduction. And yeah, I hadn't listened to that album for years, but I'd forgotten how good it sounds.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, that happened with Roxy Music, didn't it? When they came back just doing really pop stuff. It happened. I mean, Bowie messed it up in the '80s, I think. So yeah, it happens. I can't blame people. I mean, people need to make a bit of money, so if they think that's going to make them money, and obviously in cases of Bowie and Roxy, it did. But yeah, it's. People like to complain about musicians because they feel let down, but as they go to the office for their dismal day job,
I think Bowie's kind of been forgiven as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I've got everything in the '70s that he did, pretty much late '60s, but I haven't got. I stopped after that. Although he did do some great stuff later, but
his last album was brilliant. Black Star is,
yeah,
I
and
think,
some of the other
one of his
ones,
best albums.
but yeah, so yeah, it's just, I don't know, I just like to I don't need to do it for a living, so I think that's kind of works quite well for me to have my studio stuff, which isn't bad. It gives me lots of contacts as well, and just do what I want to do. And like at the moment, seeing as a lot of countries are no go now. You know, we used to tour in Russia, and even we played Kyiv once. We played Ukraine. We used to play America all the time, and I'm not going there either. But yeah, so there's a lot of, but that's partly why I'm thinking, well, I can afford to do it now, and the Far East sounds fun. And we went to Australia. We did Japan a few years ago, and then Australia and New Zealand, and as you know, Bangkok last May, Hong Kong, and
And India in March, which is
we
very
got Delhi.
unusual for. How
Yeah,
did that
it is.
happen?
It was literally, I just saw on, I think it was on Facebook. It might have been Instagram, just that this club had started, like they're saying, the first Gothic industrial night in India. And I thought, wow. And I just emailed and said, do you want us to play? And said, I'm not worried about the money. Don't worry about that. I've never been to India. So we've got a week.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it.
I will, yeah. I've already marked out where the big incense market is, and I'll be getting lots of stuff.
That's the question I was going to ask, actually. Yeah, because when I saw you guys live last year, and you always have this big bunch of. At first, I thought you were smoking a massive joint, and then I realised
I know it does look like that, and
it does look like you've got
I'd like to encourage that.
The biggest Camberwell carrot in the world, but no, it was actually a big bunch of incense. How did that start? Has that got any sort of spiritual significance, or it's just the visual
come from
aspect?
I mean, I put incense on almost every day or evening, usually at home, and I love it. I've always loved it. So it came from that, really. Yeah, and then obviously you get it in temples and churches and things. And it's that. It became. I can't remember the first time I did it. Actually, I wish I could. I should have made a note, but I can't, and it doesn't matter. And it is a spiritual thing, and I almost like this. Occasionally, you get venues where they go, "Oh no, we don't do that because fire regulations, and we can't do it." And well, they say that about smoke machines nowadays. It's mine, I mean, it does look at Switzerland. It does, things do burn, don't they? So I get it. I do get it, but it does make me feel like I don't. Oh, like, oh my God, I don't. I'm scared. I haven't got my little.
Well, I liked it because I was photographing your gig, and it adds a whole new level of visual interest if you're a photographer as well, because you get the smoke from the incense interacting with the spotlights, and it just makes the stage look really beautiful.
Yeah. Apparently, I can do it in Delhi, so.
There's no health and safety laws in India. I think you can do pretty much whatever
Well,
you
they
want.
wouldn't let us
I
use
would
a
have thought.
smoke machine, but they said
Okay.
incense, so that's good actually. So, and then I think I'll just buy it there. I think they've got enough over there. I get it all sent. I mean, every local shop around me has incense from India, so I'll get that.
So you mentioned you're playing a goth industrial night in India. What genre do you consider yourselves to be in, or do you put yourselves in any sort of genre?
Genres are funny, aren't they? Because you sort of need them in a way just to point the way. You say, oh, this is like saying it's a horror film or it's a comedy film. Whereas if you do stuff that isn't quite, there's lots of films that don't fit in. But so I get that genres exist, but I don't. The whole sort of the goth thing, I'm not a big fan of it really, although.
No, because when you played in Bangkok, it was kind of put on as a bit. All the flyers were very, very sort of goth looking, and I thought, well, they've got Attrition a little bit wrong, because I don't think Attrition are really goths, but you kind of get lumped in with goth a little bit.
I know we do, but I mean, it's originally we had nothing to do with it, and in the 80s there was goth music, which was it was all guitar really,
Yeah,
and then the industrial would be Cabaret, Voltaire, and then we've thought of ourselves along that lines really. But it was, from what I know, in the 90s it sort of came together as in Germany particularly. There's sort of those both sort of strands of, there's a sort of dark atmosphere in both of those styles really, and it kind of came together and started getting called Darkwave, which I prefer really. But I mean, industrial's fine, but we're not necessarily what I'd always say would be industrial, and that changed from Throbbing, Gristle, noise experiments to Ministry, heavy rock, and it was all called industrial, so that's kind of meaningless. And I did like what was called goth in the early days, like Bauhaus and Susie, I suppose, and that kind of early thing. I really like that, but I don't know. God, we are what we are. But if you get a big goth festival invites us to go and play in, wherever in the world, then but if it looks good, I'll do it. I'm not going to go, oh no, I don't like the name. I don't care. I mean, we were on, I'm sure you know Cherry Red Records, and they've really come back actually, because they did a lot of rubbish for years, but they've really come back with some great releases and lots of box sets of music from the past, and we've been on about 5 of them, I think, maybe 4, I can't remember. But they did sort of early industrial music, UK industrial, and then they did I think Darkwave one, and then they did a goth one, and I thought, oh God, do we want to be on a goth one? And then it was like, well, Joy Division's on it. I went, yes, I want to be on that. So it's just a name. I mean, they're not really what you'd call a goth band either.
I think there's goth bands, and then there's bands that goths like, aren't there? Like the Cure, aren't the Cure? I mean, the Cure always hate being called goths, but they're probably the most popular goth band in the world still, aren't they?
I think so. Yeah. So it is a bit funny, but it kind of points people in the right direction, doesn't it? And seems to be a bit of a buzz going on about this gig in India. So maybe we'll be big in India, but we can.
Biggest British band in India. Yeah, not many British bands play India. I think Ed Sheeran played there last year. So there you go. You might be bigger than Ed Sheeran in India. That would be good.
He's quite small, isn't he?
He is. I mean, when your vocals have definitely got a little bit of a sort of that sort of growl, is kind of pre death metal almost. How did that whole vocal style start off?
Well, that just happened. I mean, it just I don't know. It's weird, but I think it's by the second album, actually, by '85. It was never conscious. I kind of like doing stuff like that. I mean, the lyrics are very surreal and subconscious, and I like to get into a bit, hypnotize myself when I'm writing with loops and things, and get into a zone and just sort of drop into it, and it just went. I don't know. I didn't. It wasn't anything. As far as I know, I wasn't copying anyone, and I just went. It just happened. Oh yeah.
Because a lot of sort of electronic industrial bands back sort of in the late 80s, people like Front 242, Skinny Puppy, Frontline Assembly, all those kind of things, they had that kind of vocal style as well. So maybe you were massively influential, Martin.
Oh well, Skinny Puppy were influenced by Attrition because they was head. But there's definitely. I was trying to find the bit. It was in an interview somewhere, and I had a copy of it once. And I thought, God, I should try and get a copy. Oh, that's right. I know Kevin Key, so I should ask him. But I don't think it was him that said it. So yeah, but yeah, they were influenced in that way. Not all. I mean, actually, Front 242 started before us, but we didn't know. It was pre-internet. It was a different time, wasn't it? Really, you didn't know what was happening. Now we don't know what's happening because there's too much happening all around. But it's a different sort of. Like ignorance maybe nowadays.
You mentioned before that that you don't like to make the same record twice, and that you don't really like to be pigeonholed as anything. And in the 90s, you did an album with classical versions of your songs, Etude. I was listening to that yesterday, and that was real, because that was a massive diversion from your normal sound. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a remix album, isn't it, in a way? No, it's not a remix. They're covers, really, aren't they? Yeah, it's good. I think, because that came about because I think it was 95. Yeah, we were doing the Three Arms and a Dead Cert album, and I got a letter from a guy from France, Dematisse, and he said, I've always loved Attrition, and I got your first album when I was at school when I was 14. That was the Attrition of Reason from '84, and he said, I've always loved it. And I now play viola in the orchestra of the Paris Opera. And he said, do you want any viola on your new album? And he said, I'd love to I'll pay my own flight, I'll just come over to your studio. I went, yeah. So it's like, we started working with him on a few albums actually, and I just thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to have him? He also played violin. He didn't play cello, so I used cello samples. But it was, I thought, wouldn't it be amazing just to do that, to do some classical versions? And that's what we did. And it's funny, I just sold one the other day. It obviously wasn't a big hit. It wasn't that something, but I like it a lot actually. But it's special meaning for me. So, but it's still, it wasn't a big hit, but it's one of those things that people still always appreciate and buy it and things. Got a big rack, a big sort of shelves of CDs. I've still got most of our titles in stock, one or two sold out. And yeah, so we did that. And then he played on, that was 95. That came out in 97. And then he played on one in 99. So he did a few albums, and then we lost touch with him. But again, that was still pretty much pre-internet. It was just kicking in, wasn't it, in the late 90s? And then it turned out he went and worked for the French embassy somewhere in South America for years. But I'm in touch again. He writes to me and buys the latest things and stuff, which is nice. I should get him involved again. He's great.
And again, I was looking at some of your old albums, and I came across the All Mine Enemies Whispers from 2008, and there's a couple of things interesting about that. Firstly, listen to it. It sounds like there's a bit of a late Scott Walker influence. Would I be right in saying that? It reminds me of Scott, like the Drift and Tilt and some of the later stuff that
I
Scott
have heard
Walker
some
was
of those
doing.
tracks since, but I didn't know them at the time, so it wasn't an influence. But yeah, he did some quite really interesting stuff, didn't he, later on?
And he did. It was like this weird radical. It's amazing the difference between the stuff he was doing in the 60s, early 70s, and the stuff he was doing at the end of his career. Was just like he went so far out there and so avant-garde. It was incredible.
Yeah, so it wasn't an influence in that at all because I didn't know him really. But I mean, I knew him from the 60s, from the Walker Brothers thing. But and even that I appreciated. No, it wasn't. But that was. Yeah, I've done a few albums like that where they're more soundtrack really, and
There's an interesting story behind why you chose, because it's based on the life of Mary Ann Cotton, who's Britain's first female serial killer.
Yeah, and I don't know if she's still the highest tally, but she poisoned. Yeah, I mean it was 80. She got hanged in 1874, I think. But she poisoned, sort of arsenic poisoning. Good tip if anyone in America's listening. But it was like, because they didn't detect it really. But it was she got like few husbands and 20. There was about 20 people, and there's loads of her kids because she would insure them. People insured their kids back then because a lot of them died, and it would pay for the funeral. Prudential, actually. So yeah, I really researched it because the reason is that my ancestor arrested her, which is mental. Yeah, and I think it was Tom McCutcheon, might be Sam, I can't remember now. But his daughter, it was a little village in County Durham, probably not that far from where I was born, really. And his daughter worked for Mary Ann Cotton as a seamstress. She got work, did seamstress stuff, sewing stuff. And so she got arrested when they finally realised what she was doing. And Mary Ann Cotton couldn't pay. It was Louise McCutcheon. Couldn't pay her. So it's like some sort of great aunt of mine. Couldn't pay her, so gave her a sewing box. And that was passed down through my family, who all were really scared of it. And my dad had it. And I went, can you imagine me? And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I want that. So I got the box, and I actually immediately bought Victorian poison bottles from the eBay and put them in the box.
That's a very goth thing. Come on, Martin, buying Victorian poison bottles. That's very goth.
I've got, it says do not drink or something. It's brilliant. It was for arsenic, So I just thought I want to tell the story. So I was reading about it and what have you. So I wanted to tell the story as a sort of audio, in a sort of kind of soundtrack, but it's different because it was telling the story in an abstract way, which I quite liked, and it was a bit.
And you got that
scary,
personal connection as well.
Yeah, that's right. I've still got the box and I went to do a photo session in the old. There's the old pub in Coventry, the Windmill. I don't know if you know it actually from like 1450. So definitely be a good one to do photos in for the album. And the photos didn't come out. And when I was walking down the street, I tripped, and I was holding a box full of poison bottles. And as I fell to the pavement, I thought, I can't let the box get broken, so I'm just going to have to take a hit. So I just took a hit on my arms. It was like, wow. And a couple of the bottles broke. And I thought, wow, it's almost like spooky, that the ghost of Marianne
Cursed.
Cotton doesn't want the photo. But that's rubbish. I just tripped.
No,
But yes,
I want to believe there's a curse. It's a better
yeah,
story. It's a much better story.
I know, but it's not true. But yeah, it was
And you
still
did
great to do.
a First World War album in
Yeah,
2015.
in a way, a similar kind of idea. I mean, they're like concept albums, which, as an old punk rocker, I probably said I'd never do, but they're scary concept albums. That's all right. And that one was because my grandfather was in the trenches at Ypres in 1917. He was badly wounded. And we'd always got postcards he sent from the front and photographs and um, a lot of memorabilia. And then I remember being about 12, and he talked to me about it, and it was not long before he died. And my dad said years later, he said he'd never mentioned it because a lot of people didn't, did they? Because it was so horrific.
Well, my granddad fought in World War II. I've got a box here with all these letters and stuff in them, amazing stuff. But he never ever spoke about it ever,
No,
not
I can
once.
imagine.
I later found out just not too long ago that he was actually in Coventry during the Blitz. He worked in telecommunications. He was kept in Coventry, and apparently he came home one night covered in blood because he'd been pulling bodies out of the rubble during the Blitz of Coventry, but he never ever spoke about it. And it's pretty obvious looking back now that he probably had PTSD. But obviously in those days, no one talked about it at all.
Well, it brings it back, doesn't it? I mean, I know for therapy, it's fine, but no one could get that at that time. And then years later, it's difficult, I think. And it was such a big thing. So, yeah, but I just wanted to do an album because actually the name Attrition comes from War of Attrition, which was, I used to do war games when I was like a young teenager and even before that. So that's really partly why my granddad was talking to me, because I was doing like First World War game and things, and he was like chatting about it. So I just wanted to do the album, and then we included reproductions of his pictures of him and postcards. And it's funny, there's a photo of him and his two like comrades, and they're all smoking on the official photo. It's just funny, but that's the least of their problems. They didn't care, did they? That's for your health, right? Get out of this trench. Yeah, so we did that, but I did that with Annie Hogan. I don't know if you know,
Mark and the
Mambas, and she's worked with everybody. She's worked with all, session musician actually for lots of people and projects she's done, and she's still doing it. So she's done a couple of albums. She's guested the grand piano on a few recent Attrition albums as well. So that's nice. That was a nice connection. It's because I mastered one of her albums. That's how I got to know her. So yeah, so I did it with her, and yeah, I'm really pleased with that. That's good. I think I've just sold out of that actually. There's a limited project that you can always get them online now, can't you? You can hear them.
Yeah, I was listening to it on Spotify. I'll post a link. I'll post the link to your work on Spotify in the podcast description as well, so anyone listening who wants to check these albums out can go and have a listen.
Yeah, or Bandcamp actually, because some people can download them then.
Yeah, and your last album, Black Maria or Black Maria, and which way you prefer to pronounce it. That was kind of more of a return to the sort of older Attrition sound, wasn't it? It sounds like a bit more of a classic Attrition album.
I think because I got back in, as I was saying, I got back into analog kit more, and I think that gives me the sound has a bit more like the early stuff, but better recorded. But yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, so yeah, even though I don't want to repeat myself, I'm always going to repeat myself to some extent, because that is me, isn't it?
And so live plans this year, you're doing India in March, and then you're coming back to Southeast Asia later in the year.
Well, that's the plan, which is coming together. Yeah, so September, October. So we haven't got any more information just yet. But yeah, to do more shows, that'd be great. Of
It's
course,
funny
we'll
because
have you.
I kind of forgotten about Attrition almost. I was coming out of a gig in Bangkok last year, and someone gave me a load of flyers. I stuffed them in my bag, and then the next morning I took these flyers out, and it said Attrition live in Bangkok, and I thought that must be some Thai band called Attrition. Then UK Darkwave pioneers, and I thought, shit, it is actually that Attrition.
I remember you telling me that when we were over. But yeah, having our pre-gig drinks night.
It was a
Yeah, yeah, it's great to be there. I love it, and I don't know. I suppose it's because I can afford to do it now.
Well, I was just going to say there can't be any money in a band like you guys touring to Southeast Asia, can there? Because you're not gonna sell out.
I mean, Hong Kong paid us very well, and they were lovely. Actually, they saw that we were playing nearby. I say, but it's compared to England, it is nearby. And they were like, they loved it, and they were really generous and paid us well. In fact, it paid for a lot of the costs for Thailand, so that was good. But yeah, I don't mind. I'm happy to do it. I mean, might die. I
It's an
don't know.
excuse.
I
It's
will.
an excuse to travel as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I love it. I always have
Yeah.
anyway. And we've got some UK gigs, and we'll have some. I'm sure we'll have some European ones. And like I mentioned, I think earlier before we started I'm that Earsol are doing their second show. The first one was, and that Earsol is Ashley from Attrition. But when we were working together, we had our very first studio in the early 80s was in Ashley's bedroom in Charlesmore, Coventry, and Black Prince Avenue, actually, which is quite a nice name. But because we had all our equipment in his bedroom, so on days that we weren't doing Attrition, he did a new project with his friends called Earsol. So
I had the
there's the
tape when I
three
was
of
a
them.
kid. I had the yellow cassette.
Yeah, I've got the vinyl version here, which won't show on the
Oh,
show on the
yeah, that's it.
podcast.
Yeah,
But
I recognise
that's
that
like the
cover.
cassette, yeah, and that came out.
What I remember about that was there was a live recording on the B side, and you could clearly hear someone in the audience say, "This is shit."
Oh, that's
And then,
fantastic. I need to hear that. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Well, it's like that Bob Dylan moment, isn't it?
yeah,
But yeah, so they're doing their first and only gig was that live recording you've heard, and that was at Bablick School in
my school.
Coventry.
Yeah, my
Oh,
school.
was it? Okay. I walked past that the other day because I'm going to buy a house nearby. But it was there in 1983 that they played. So this year, their second gig is in Friedrichshafen in Germany for the Vinyl on Demand Festival, which is lots of experimental bands.
That
We
has
we
to be the
played the.
longest gap between first and second gig
I know
in
it's pretty
musical history,
impressive, isn't
surely.
it? Yeah, so they were getting together and they're having to reinvent the tracks, program them from scratch really. And I've heard one that they've done and it sounds great. So they're just going to have to pull their finger out to get it done in time. But as they've not really had any experience of playing, Ashley has done a few gigs with Attrition, but not organised anything. So he asked me if I'd be their tour manager. So I've got another hat on now and I'm the sole tour manager. So I've got to do a bit of that later. But yeah, so they're doing their second gig, but there's definitely an Attrition connection there. Yeah,
I mean,
that'll be interesting.
you've got the remastering and stuff, but how do musicians, not you in particular, but how do musicians make money these days in 2026? It's got to be harder than it's ever been.
I think it's definitely hard in that way how sort of physical sales dropped, didn't they? And online sharing at first, wasn't it? And all the old Napster and things that this sort of illegal streaming and downloading that really hit. Well, for an example, we were in 99 because this was like 20 years ago this kicked in, didn't it?
Yeah.
Round about 99 we did the Jeopardy Maze album Nutrition, and it sold about 10,000 copies, mostly in America, so it was pretty decent. Whereas now we would physical copies would be about 1,000 or something. It's really So that all, I mean, it collapsed. The sort of CDs were so expensive, I think. I think that was something to do with it. Then everyone got into the illegal downloading. That was even before stream. People complained about that, but that was before streaming. But that really did hit. And I remember being a bit depressed and talking, like, let's say, 10 years after that, it was his worst, probably. And bands, I just felt the same as other bands, like, what's the point in releasing an album, because it just cost too much to do. But then I think things climbed back, and this is one of the ways forward, really, that vinyl came back again, didn't it? And well, even cassettes to a lesser extent, but they're quite popular. And that sort of, that came out, and it's very bit boutique and collectible, but it got bigger and bigger. So that helped, but it's still, I don't think it replaced the amount of money that you had with the bigger sales. But then streaming, you don't get a lot from it, but I always compare streaming to like money I get from the PRS for radio plays. Because streaming, you don't own it. To me, it is like listening to it on the radio, really. It's just radio on demand, isn't it, sort of? So I get a bit of money every month from streaming, and I wouldn't have got that before. So in itself, it's not bad. But if that means people don't buy so much, then I get that. That is hurting people. My son does music. He does rap music. He's had millions of streams, and he made like tens of thousands of pounds while he was at college at 18. So it's partly how popular your music is. So it isn't all bad. And sometimes I think a good thing to do to make money is not spend all your time complaining about things, and use that time to promote your music. I started doing a lot of merchandise, so I'd have a reissue of something, and always do a t-shirt run. And you can make quite good money on t-shirts, and people are walking around with an advert, aren't they, on them? So I've done lots of like merch to help. That's, it's capitalist, isn't it?
You've got to make a bit. I don't think anyone objects to musicians making a bit of money, do they?
No, I know it's not actually a bad thing. I mean, it's just it's not exploitative, is it? But it's just funny when it comes down to that you end up spending more time thinking about manufacturing things to sell, rather than just doing your music. Yeah, but I think you have to have lots of income streams. That's the thing, and lots of kind of strings to your bow, really. So doing related things, I think, is a really good way to make money. So you can, I do my studio, which is great, but you might do live sound, or work in a club or a studio or label. Labels do okay. There's a lot of labels I know that I work with that still do okay. They tend to do a lot more smaller releases, maybe. So I don't think it's so bad. I know people that they go, they record something probably at home, put it on, they go put it up for streaming and on Bandcamp, and then go, oh, nobody's bought it. And I think, yeah, but you've forgotten that there's marketing. You've missed that bit out, haven't you? And I think, if you can't do that, this is what labels could do. Good. Or you get a manager and things like that. There's a lot of things that still work, I think. And when things went back to doing, because when I started, we'd be hand making cassettes and selling them, and all that kind of thing. And then it's gone back to that a bit. Like, people like hand done limited editions, and I quite like it because it's back to my roots, really. Those CDs were a bit faceless in their jewel cases, weren't they? And cost a fortune, and I think that's what I'd say was one of the issues. I mean, CD sales have come back. I still probably sell more CDs than anything, but you tend to get them more digipack little booklets and blah blah. It's people make more effort, I think. So there's ways forward. It isn't all bad, and the internet is. I can't imagine that I could have how I even arranged tours in the 80s before the internet. Like, used to write a letter to a booker in Germany, and then I'd get a letter back probably, I guess, 2 weeks later, and then it'd be like I'd go to a phone box because I didn't have a landline. There was no mobiles. Go and put £1 in, out my dole money, and phone them just before we're leaving on Tuesday. We'll be there. And that was it. And we managed to
I
go.
can't imagine how we arranged anything in the 80s. I mean, I can remember
No,
going on holiday to Wales and my dad writing letters to guest houses in Wales to make bookings and things like that. I mean,
it's mad, isn't it? But
it's
I
amazing
think
when you think about it now.
yeah, but I think people stuck with it. I remember I'd go to the pub. I'd meet in the Rocket, which you might know it
Yeah,
used to be
or the
called,
station.
yeah, it's gone now, but meet there because it was a good point to meet to go into town on a Friday with your mates from school. But you just go 7 o'clock at the Rocket when you're at school, and everyone was there. And now you get a text going, "I'm running a bit late." And I hate that. It's like, it's people. I think when I first got emails, I didn't trust them. I thought, hang on, this is a bit weird. Anyone can do that. Then you realise sometimes it was obviously someone drunk at night going, "Oh, I love Attrition," or "Yeah, I can get you a gig," and then you never hear from them again. And whereas when you made an effort to write a letter, you were generally more serious, I think. And
Well, let's not be those old guys moaning about technology, huh?
no,
Let's
no, I
not.
mean, it's great.
Let's,
I'm saying it was, no, no, definitely not. No, we hate the postal service, but um, no, it was just, it still worked. That's what I mean. It's definitely interesting that we didn't need the internet. It still worked. But now it's great because I would have heard about that club night in Delhi. I wouldn't have. So it is wonderful, and I like contacting people. So it's.
yeah, and then in the last episode, I spoke to Paul from a band, the Whipping Boy Irish band, and he was saying the great thing about it is that, he's just put out a solo album and he can record an album and he can put it out and people can be listening to it same afternoon, which he likes, in terms of that instant distribution and getting a lot of people to hear your music, as he said. And things have definitely improved in that sense, even though he makes no money from it. Being able to get your music into people's ears, bang, within hours of recording it is good.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's different, but it's still a lot of the way the music business isn't that much different. There's just different outlets now, and people still get. You can. I've had music in films and got some nice money from that. Not loads of it, but yeah, and done some soundtracks. That's another thing you can do, isn't it? Do film or TV stuff. There's lots of things you can do, or maybe the rest. Maybe just do music as one thing, but that you make your money from something that you like. That actually doesn't have to be music, does it? So you just have to think, and it's difficult when you've got a regular 9 to 5 kind of, or not supposed to be 9 to 5, but a regular job, and then It's the same for anyone's if you're self-employed, isn't it? It's difficult. There's a lot of people have that point where they can't take the time off work to go and tour, and that's when bands often split up or people drop out. And that's always been the case. But if you can do flexible things around, I think it's easier to work flexibly now in lots of different kinds of part-time this or self-employed that. And that's better. I think the attitudes, I remember when what was it? I was doing my fanzine, so it's a long time ago. That's 45 years ago, and I was getting hassled by the dole, and like as you do, and I said, so I went down to an agency in Coventry. I remember going in and going, "Have you got any part-time jobs? Because I do this magazine, and I wouldn't mind just doing something to make money." And then I've got this rest of the time I do that, and they were like, "Oh no, we've only got them that's for women, really." It was like it's sort of pin money, when they're not looking at dropping the kids off at the school. It's like, wow. So things have changed. That was like, wow, that's mental. And it's funny because now there's a mural when there was the City of Culture in Coventry. 21, no, 21 now, yeah. So it was 2021. They did one of the things they did was put a mural of Coventry music history all around the bus stop, the bus station. The bus stop, yeah, it was that small, you know. No, it was a bus, Palmetto bus station. It's got a big mural, which is actually great. And it's obviously mostly there's loads of two-tone specials. There's a little bit about me, and there's a picture of me and some of the fanzines, and that's great. I mean, I love it. Every time someone comes to visit, I by chance I'm walking past there with them to point it out. And but it's so funny that while I was doing that, I was getting hassled by the dole, and I wasn't supposed to be doing it, you know. And it was just, it's weird, isn't it? If you kind of toe the line and have a regular life, you'll never be on that sort of thing. You know, it'd be, you know, it's people are celebrated for not doing I don't know what the word is really, for straying from the path, if you like. So yeah, you just have to. I think you have to think outside the box really, and just do different things. And yeah, you might be good, might have other interests, so you might make your money from that. But I mean, can't say I've ever thought of making money from the band. I mean, I do, but it's not why I do it. I've been quite good, you know. I've made tours paid. It's only more recently I think now I'm going to be a bit exotic and go somewhere. Where in the world do I want to go? Pretty much, and I can. And there's always a little cult following. Attrition's got a cult following all around the world, you know. So that is good.
That's good. Good. Well, that's quite an optimistic note, I think, to end on. We've gone past the hour mark.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. So India, so Delhi, what, 1st of March, isn't it?
1st of March, yeah.
1st of March, and then Southeast Asia or the Far East. When
we're looking
at be?
The idea would be early October or late September. That around then.
Okay.
More news as we get it.
Good. Well, yes. Watch this space. Well, thanks a lot, Martin, for joining me. It's been really interesting. Anyone who's listening, I'll be sharing links to some of the stuff we've mentioned, like some of Martin's albums and things, in the podcast description, so you can check those out. Good luck with the India gig. I'd love to be there, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make it, unfortunately, this time. But I'll definitely see you in Thailand and maybe Vietnam later this year.
Yeah, brilliant. Look forward to it.
Excellent.
Okay. Right.
All right. Thanks very much, Martin.
Same. Cheers. Bye.
Big thanks to Martin for taking the time to chat to me. And as I speak, the lucky bugger is currently sunning himself in the Cayman Islands. I guess I can't complain. I'm in Thailand. So thanks, everybody, for listening. And don't forget to like, share, rate, comment, and subscribe, as they all really help with getting some exposure for this podcast and helping the algorithms do whatever it is that they do. If you'd like to collaborate, either as a guest, a sponsor, advertiser, or whatever, please get in touch. You can comment below this episode, or you can email me on iwttay.podcast@gmail.com. And I'm really regretting choosing that email address. Pretty stupid, but iwttay.podcast@gmail.com. My next guest is travel writer and rail enthusiast Matthew Woodward, and that episode will be out on 26th of February, so look out for that. Until then, thanks for listening, and see you soon.